I want to welcome everybody. My name is Katie Warren. I'm with the Washington State Association of Head Start and ECAP. I know many, if not most of you, from our lots of calls that we do with staff and parents. And I want to welcome Brenda. Before we start, I wonder if everybody can write in the chat where they are joining us from. So we have a better sense of where you guys are coming from, maybe where you're joining us from, and whether you're with a Head Start or an ECAP or an Early Head Start or something else. And I'll take another sip of my coffee.
Can you disable screen sharing, please?
Yes. All right, you should be able to share your screen. All right. I'm going to mute everybody and then unmute Brenda. And we have folks from Spokane, Okanagan, Vancouver, Seattle, let's see here, North Seattle, FRN, don't know what that is, Marcy, Lake Quinault, Pasco, oh my gosh, we just have people from everywhere all around. West Seattle from Region 10 TNTA, Spokane Valley, Franklin Pierce, right, in Tacoma, Parkland, Tacoma. Claire Wilson from Federal Way, our state senator and early education champion, Port Angeles, Auburn, Grandview. We have a really good mix here of folks from around the state, and Seattle from Neighborhood House. So I really want to welcome Brenda for joining us. We have a couple of members here and staff, Maricela and Fatima, who have really been attending all of the WI, oh my gosh, I Washington State, what, WSIS meetings, and have really been keeping us up to date at the association. And many of you know that I've shared a lot of their information in our WASA Monday emails, and they're doing a really great job in the advocacy space around COVID response for families who are undocumented or mixed or immigrants, but also in an ongoing way with the work that they're doing with deportations and all of that. And we wanted to invite Brenda to come on to talk about their work and how we can help families, but also how we can get involved in their advocacy work moving forward so that we can change the system to help our families as well. So Brenda, take it away.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for inviting me to be part of your meeting for once. As you mentioned, Maricela and Fatima have been really involved and have even offer the translation services in many of the calls that we've had, including with the governor. So thank you for your continuous support. As I briefly mentioned at the beginning, I am from Eastern Washington. I am one of the co-directors for the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network. I am based in Kennewick. I heard some of you are in the Tri-Cities area as well. And I have lived in Eastern Washington for over 16 years now, since I first came to this country at the age of 9 to reunite with my farm working family. I'm a DACA recipient, and I have family and friends who are undocumented, and that is why I'm in this work, to be able to fight back and protect myself and my family and my community, especially in Eastern Washington, where we have such a high population of immigrants and Latinx folks, and yet that is not translated in the leadership and at a local level, at a state level, and we continue to be targeted by immigration enforcement, especially at the workplace. So my goal for today is to be able to share with you all who WISEN is, first of all, what has been our work pre-COVID and during COVID, and how it all intersects with the broader goal and value of the network, which is to dismantle the deportation machine and be able to reunite families. I'm going to talk about how we have pivoted our work to be able to address this pandemic, and what are the advocacy pillars of our work that are moving forward in the ways that you can get engaged, especially in this time where we are at a very pivotal moment for one of the advocacy campaigns. So WISEN is a statewide network of over 250 organizations now. It was built or created in 2016, right after the presidential election results. We knew we were going to be in a moment where immigrants, refugees, asylees, people of color were going to be heavily targeted by this administration. We didn't envision a 2020 like we are currently in, but it was close enough, right? It was going to be fire after fire. We were going to see increase in deportations and targeting of folks. So it was important for the immigrant rights movement to come together and work together and move in a cohesive direction. And also, we needed a way to learn and know what was happening across the state. We needed an ear on the ground and an immediate way to communicate with people. And that's how the hotline was created. And this hotline was created because we really thought we were going to see a lot of raids, a lot of like big detentions in the state of Washington. But through the course of almost 4 years now, we learned that that was not the way that immigration, custom enforcement, ICE, or La Migra, or Custom Border Patrol, CBP, that's not the way that those agencies were operating in the state of Washington. They were working in a more insidious way. And through this hotline, we have been able to learn the tactics and strategies of enforcement activity. We have been able to help families immediately through our deportation defense efforts, which are taking on those cases and mounting either public or pressure on sheriffs, on commissioners, on ICE officers to get people released before they end up in the detention center. Once you are in the detention center, you have to navigate the bureaucracy of that agency, which holds people in that space much longer. If you are granted a bond, you are looking between $10,000 to $50,000, and the immigration system, you have to pay your bond in full to be released. And who has that type of money, especially undocumented immigrants and families? So our goal is always to try to get people released before they even get to the detention center in Tacoma. And we're able to do that because people will call the hotline immediately. So we're able to intersect while they're being held at a county jail or while they're being processed at an office that's not in Tacoma. And I'll share a little bit more about what that looks like. But really, this hotline is how we gather our data, how we learn what communities are facing, and what we need to focus on our work. And that data then gets shared with our members. My colleague and I, Montserrat Padilla, we are not attorneys, we are community organizers. So there are many parts of this work that require litigation, that require legislation. That's not what we do, but we do work with partners who do that and we share with them. This is how people are ending up in deportation proceedings. How can we stop this? What can we do to change this? And then an advocacy campaign is born out of there, or a piece of legislation or litigation against an agency or or a company, right, depending on the issue. So the network really, the purpose of YSIN is to communicate with everyone across the state, to move resources out of King County and the west side, and really channel them to the east side, where we have, again, a lot of enforcement activity, and we have smaller grassroots groups that are not nonprofits, but are doing work in their community, and those are our rapid response teams. So that's a little bit about YSIN and the structure, and the goal. The value of YSIN is to stop deportation, and that continues to be the case. We did pivot for COVID-19, and expanded what we are able to offer through the hotline. So when the Stay Home, Stay Healthy order was first announced on March 23rd, even before that, we started to get a few calls from people all over the state, that were already asking questions about what did it mean for them? What did this pandemic mean for them at the workplace, at their schools? People already had concerns about food insecurity, or what was going to happen if they didn't go to work. So we had already started to see a lot of the anxiety that immigrant communities were facing. And when the order came out, the following Monday, on the 30th, we officially launched our COVID immigrant response, which included adding to the hotline information, services, programs, local funds, wherever resources were available at that time, people were going to be able to access that if they call the hotline. And they could also continue to report immigration enforcement activity. Just to give you an idea of what this change meant for us, we went from having between 40 to 60 calls on a busy week just on immigration enforcement activity, and they were primarily coming from East and Central Washington. On March 30th, by noon, we already had 5,000 calls, and the calls were primarily coming from King and Snohomish County, which at that point were the counties that were already that were the hotspot for the pandemic. So we started to see the huge increase in calls, but also the shift of where people were calling us from. So through the work that we've been doing to respond to this pandemic, we are addressing this in a more holistic way. And really what this virus has showed to the rest of the world is what our communities already knew and what we had already been saying, right? That Black and Brown communities are disproportionately impacted in all sectors and all systems, including healthcare. And we have been able to see that, especially now. That our communities have been living paycheck to paycheck and in an economic crisis, but this pandemic has really spiraled out of control and put people in a deeper crisis than we were before. And a lot of the reason is because we don't qualify for any federal programs, any benefits, unemployment, or we're part of the stimulus checks that were issued to the country. So our communities all already knew this, and with that framework, we try to address some of the immediate concerns, which were funds, and I'll talk more about them. And then, of course, the racist rhetoric from from Trump targeting Asians, Pacific Islanders, and more recently Latino, right? Blaming communities of color for this pandemic. We also always known that immigrants are the backbone of this country and have always and will always be essential workers. But again, we have not been given the protections at the workplace or the benefits as other communities because the lack of immigration status. And right off the bat, we started to host meetings with with different organizations to discuss what would it look like to create or to have an unemployment program in the state of Washington, because so many members of our community were losing their jobs and they were not getting any other um, source of income, and they were not going to qualify for anything that came out of federal level like we saw. So from the beginning, we knew that this was going to be a huge piece of advocacy that needed to happen now, because if it's not going to happen during a global pandemic, it's not going to happen later on. And this is the moment that our communities need it the most. So right from the beginning, we started to have those conversations. And I have happy to announce how that has moved forward, and we've made a lot of progress. So our goal from the beginning has been to bridge resources to undocumented families who are impacted. We have 29 community teams across the state, which we call rapid response teams. Pre-COVID, these are the teams that if you call us from Tri-Cities and you are reporting ICE officers or sightings of enforcement, even if you don't know what agency it is, we have a group of trained volunteers that will go to that location and will document with their cell phones and having trained on how to interact with those agencies, information on who they are, what they're doing there. If there are immigration officials, do they have a judicial warrant? Where are they taking these people? How many people are being taken? So that the network then activates and we're ready to dispatch resources according on where people are being taken. With the goal of getting people released before they end up at the Northwest Detention Center. We're able to do that in 2018 during the raid here in Basin City at the little town that I grew up with in Franklin County, where 10 community members were detained on their way to work, and within 72 hours, 9 of the 10 were released and reunited with their families. This doesn't mean that their case is done and over. This just means that they're fighting their case from their community, from their homes, that they're still able to work and provide for their families and pay for their immigration cases, which increase the likelihood of them winning their case. So that's what our rapid response teams have been doing for over 3 years. And now during this pandemic, there have been a lot of the teams who have created mutual aid networks, who have fundraised to be able to provide people with funds for rent, for food, for bills. In addition, we wanted to be able to connect people with existing resources in their communities, like food banks, so that people didn't have to worry about food, and instead they did get a check from a local fund. That money could be used towards something else. So we were connecting people and reminding folks that there are services in their area that they should be taking advantage of right now, so that they can prioritize even how they respond to this crisis. We have been providing accurate and better information, both from the agencies, from organizations, on what to do if you're symptomatic, where to go, what are the testing sites, what does quarantining mean under their very particular circumstances. We have a lot of people who call us and live in a house with 3 or 4 other families. So quarantining is really not an option, right? So how do you navigate them? People who have other questions regarding healthcare, who have to get surgery, or who don't have money to get medicine because they're no longer working. So a lot of that information and almost case management has been happening through the hotline. And all that information that we're gathering on the ground, again, is informing our advocacy moving forward.
Brenda, can I get you?
Yeah.
Can I get you to turn your video off? Maybe your connection is a little bit rocky, so I'm wondering if that might improve it.
Yeah, let's try that. And feel free to stop me if I'm cutting off at any point. So our hotline is this is the number 1-844-724-3737. Monday through Friday between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Is when we are answering COVID related calls. Our hotline is open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Because of the high volume of calls, we wanted to reserve at least a few hours just for immigration related calls. So people can call us even before 9 a.m., but we try to reserve that spot just for immigration related purposes. We are open Monday through Sunday, but again, we're trying to limit when people call for COVID related information or purposes so that we have the most volunteers available. And these are the type of information and resources that people can gather there. Um, Through those calls that we have been receiving, people also started to report unsafe working conditions at the warehouses, in the fields, wage theft, people reporting that they were being threatened at the workplace, that they couldn't report to LNI, or that they shouldn't be talking to anyone about the lack of protective equipment, or there was going to be retaliation. So again, we quickly started to learn that the community didn't just need immediate like assistance on funds, but also that this pandemic was manifesting in their workplace, that it was manifesting in their households. And we started working with labor and organizations and to be able to address the unsafe working conditions of people. So people can call us for that as well, and they will get a free consultation with the Northwest Justice Project. Because we do have a lot of calls coming in, people can also send us a message through Facebook if they are not getting through the hotline. Um, and we have volunteers who are answering and providing information in that way as well. This is just some of the stats around the hotline. This is up until April, beginning of April. Those numbers have dramatically increased ever since. But some of the stats continue to be pretty consistent. Well, I would say now it's about 95% of the calls are Spanish speakers. Again, the primary places where we're getting calls are from the West Side, Kings, Nahamish. Um, and we're starting to get, actually, now we're starting to see a little shift, and it's coming back to the East Side. We're getting more calls, and a lot of the reason is because folks have been working during this whole pandemic in agriculture, and it's now starting to, a lot of people are now starting to get infected more at the workplace, or many of the crops are ending coming in, so people are in that transition period and need support. So that's why we're starting to see a little bit more of the East Side. Um, our conversations are pretty in depth. They're about 40 minutes. People may call us for food, but we talk about rent, we talk about healthcare, we talk about the workplace, we talk about how their family's doing. We explain the moratorium. Right now, that is the number one reason people are calling, is for rent. Rent and housing is the number one reason, whether people are concerned and worried that they don't have money to pay rent, but also starting to see a lot more landlords that are harassing people, that are threatening with eviction, and our community does not know that there's a moratorium against evictions, and they don't know what this means or how to advocate for themselves. So providing them with that knowledge has helped a lot of our communities be able to advocate for themselves and say, no, I know my rights. I know that I cannot be evicted. I know that I have to pay you back all this money, but you cannot kick me out. And that also has been a huge success on our part, being able to equip people with knowledge to advocate for themselves. We have a group of researchers who have been tasked with literally researching every resource, fund, information at a local level in every county that is available during COVID. Um, and we have a resource finder that I believe you all should have the link to. If not, I can send it, where you can search by county, whether you're looking for food, for housing, for mental health, for healthcare, and you will get a list of vetted resources. And the way that we have vetted those resources are um, so that they are immigrant, undocumented, refugee, asylee friendly. And what we mean by that is questions around, who can access this? What are the languages that this is available in? Do you require a social security number? Is this available to people without immigration status? What about somebody who's uninsured? Um, what are your hours? Do you make accommodations? What type of identification do you need? What if somebody doesn't have any type of identification? So those types of questions are asked when we are vetting resources, and then are uploaded to this database that the hotline uses to be able to connect people to resources when they call. But it's also available to all of you organizations that are trying to support families in this moment. And there's also an option for you to suggest a resource if you don't see it there that you know of that's available right now during COVID. Please feel free to add it, and then we have our team review it and upload it. So know that those resources have been vetted to the best of our ability to ensure that they are undocumented and immigrant friendly.
Brenda, can I see that link again, please?
Yes, I will send that to you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And then we also have a group of case managers who are then following up with every person that we have talked to over the hotline, checking in on them a few weeks later or a month later, and asking how they are doing, if they were symptomatic, how are they feeling now, if they were positive, what was the outcome of that case, was the resources that we provided helpful, if not, do they need more support? So we are following up with people, and we are checking in on them constantly. Also, as a reminder that they are not alone in this process, that they have people that cared about their well-being, especially since a lot of we are kind of maxed out on the resources that are available. So a lot of our follow-up conversations, we are not providing a new fund, or we are not providing a new, resource. In a lot of the cases, we are checking in on them and using that time for them to vent, to share with us how they're feeling, which a lot of our community has shared. It has been helpful. And we have started to see more and more of folks' mental health taking a toll because of having to be quarantined. But a lot of our communities have been, the breadwinners, not just for their families here, but back in their home countries. So knowing that they cannot provide for their families here and their families back home also takes an emotional toll on folks who have been working their whole lives, right? So we're also working with mental health agencies, trying to figure out what is the best way that we can support people, and how can we facilitate the process for people to access therapy or to access a session, knowing the stigma that's around mental health in our community. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen there, but we are starting to address that as well. And as I have shared, undocumented folks and people with mixed status families, what we mean by mixed status families is that some people in that family may be documented, may have citizenship, may have a green card, may have a work permit or a social security number, but others in the family don't. And as we saw, people with mixed status families did not qualify for the stimulus package that was sent out about a month ago, I believe. So because we knew from the beginning that undocumented folks were going to be excluded. And then we quickly saw that so were mixed status families, in partnership with the Washington Dream Coalition, which is an organization that's led by undocumented community and youth. They decided to create a fund to be able to help people who were being excluded and did not have any access to any other form of income or support. And that's why folks that have DACA or have TPS were excluded from this particular fund. Because if you have a work permit like DACA or TPS that's not expired, you can get unemployment. And that's something we should be sharing with our communities. If you have DACA or TPS or any work permit, you can get unemployment. So folks that don't have that cannot, and that's why this fund was created to target that particular community.
If you're on unemployment with DACA, doesn't that affect your DACA?
It doesn't. It's not public charge.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So on Friday, March 27th, we launched a fundraiser goal of $100,000 in partnership with them. And we also launched a waiting list, right? This waiting list was just going to notify people when the application came live. And immediately we started to see thousands of people sign up to this wait list. So we knew that the need was going to be greater than $100,000. The day that the application was released or went live, by 3 p.m., we already had over 6,000 applications. So that was an average of 520 applications every hour of people requesting support. This fund is continuing to seek for partnerships and fundraising opportunities. The goal was of $100,000 was increased periodically. Now we are at over $3 million that have been fundraised, which has supported thousands of families statewide. Because there has been a lot of funds and there was a lot of support and resources in the King County area, they were intentional of only approving 1/3 of the applications in King County and then 2/3 of the applications from the rest of the state to try to be equitable, but also address the gaps. Again, that I mentioned, that there's not that many resources outside of those counties. So if you want to create a fundraising in partnership, or you know of any foundations or grant opportunities, or any any type of opportunities for us to partner to continue to raise funds, please contact us so that we can continue to raise money. The fund has now over 20,000 applications. Even though it is at a 3 million mark, it is still not enough to be able to support every single person who applies. And just to give people an idea of what those numbers look like, when the application first went live, there were about 140 applications from both Benton and Franklin County, which is the Tri-Cities area, totaling up $150,000 in requesting aid. And that was when the application first opened up. That number has now increased even more. So even though $3 million is a lot of money and has gone very far, we still need more support. And because of everything that we have been gathering, it has been informing our advocacy. One, the need for healthcare access for all. And again, this is something that our communities have always known, have always said we needed, but during this pandemic, it has become more and more obvious. We continue to dismantle the deportation, work towards dismantling the deportation machine, and getting families released in partnership with the Shut Down the Northwest Detention Coalition. We have been working and demanding the release of communities that are high risk, and every community and every person detained at the Northwest Detention Center, because we know that that center, or any person or any camp in any part of the world, is not equipped to be able to respond to a pandemic. We have been also holding our local police departments and sheriffs accountable, and really asking them to enforce Keep Washington Working, which is a state law that was passed in 2019 that prohibits collaboration between immigration and any state agency, including police departments. So in this time, more than ever, we don't need people to be detained and to be put in detention centers where they can, their likelihood of dying is even greater now because of this pandemic. And then the third piece of advocacy is the Workers Relief Fund, which has been informed by the undocumented relief fund that I just explained. I can share more about what this campaign has looked like. So again, from the beginning of this pandemic, we came together, we knew that we needed a way for people to access unemployment benefits. And accessing unemployment benefits as an undocumented community doesn't mean that we're taking away from we're taking funds away that don't belong to us. We're not asking for charity. We're not asking for anything that's not ours. And what I mean by that is that undocumented folks pay taxes, not only sales taxes, but state taxes, federal taxes. We pay into Social Security, even though we don't get that benefit. So really what this campaign is asking is for the state to remove the barriers that we currently have to access those programs. Because again, that's money that our communities have been working and contributing to the state. On April and May, over 430 organizations, including you all, I believe, 18 Jesuit leaders, and other faith communities signed on a letter in support of a worker relief fund of $100 million. And we came up with that number based on the applications that the undocumented relief fund was getting, based on how much money we would need to be able to fund all those applications, and based on how many people in the state of Washington have an I-10 number. So that's how that number was, what we came up with that number. It has been a collective demand that we have been asking for now over 3 months. After that letter was sent, the governor agreed to have a meeting with us. This was an all Spanish speaking meeting. We had Marisela here translating for us. And the governor got to hear from impacted community. They got to hear from folks who were positive with COVID because they were working on Tyson plans. So they got to hear the intersections of both the lack of healthcare, the lack of workers' protection, and the lack of access to unemployment. Got to hear from domestic workers in the Seattle area. I got to share the story of my mom, who works at a warehouse, who has cancer, who has diabetes, who is high risk, who doesn't have healthcare, and who is forced to go to work and risk her life because she doesn't have any other source of income. So this meeting was really impactful, and we really center the stories and the livelihoods of those who would benefit from those from this worker relief fund. After that meeting, the governor committed to getting back to us within a week. After almost a month, we didn't hear from him. When we did hear, they offered us they made a proposal of expanding the program of DCAP, disaster cash relief, right? Something along those lines, which is already very inaccessible to a lot of our communities. It's a very tedious, long process. We've had a lot of complaints and a lot of people who have asked us for support, and even for our volunteers who are native English speakers, who are pretty tech savvy, has been a challenging process. So we knew that this was not going to be an acceptable solution. And in addition, undocumented communities were going to have to like we are now, compete for funding, right? They were just going to give more money to the program, but it was not a program exclusively for the community that continues to be left out. So we went back and we said, no, this is not what our communities need. We do want you to continue to fund DCAP because it is a program that is making a difference, and it's in the life of our communities. So continue to fund DCAP, continue to work towards making it a better program, more accessible program, but that is not what we asked for. And we still need you to create a workers' relief fund of $100 million and commit to a long-term solution. After various actions and strategies, we built momentum. We wrote a letter of discontent to the governor on June 12th. The first letter, the tone was very positive and uplifting. We were praising him for his leadership, for his response to this pandemic. But as time went on, not just on this campaign, but also our farm worker siblings that were on strike and continue to face unsafe working conditions. Their demands were not being met. Domestic workers were also advocating for better working conditions, and their demands were not met. So we started to see that a pattern that there was a lot of dismissal from his office when it came to issues that impacted working immigrants and undocumented folks in the state of Washington. So we were upset about that his delay in giving us a response was the same response that all other advocates were getting on any issues that involved immigrants and undocumented folks. On June 18th, we got a ruling from the Supreme Court, which I will talk to you all about in a little bit. But DACA recipients met with the governor in a live press conference. And DACA recipients, immigrant youth, used that moment to hold him accountable and asked him to not just stand side by side and uplift DACA recipients, but to do the same for all of our community. And that includes creating this worker relief fund, which he got up and walked away from that press conference. On June 26th, the policy team of this campaign met with Inslee's team, and a proposal was shared to us. Where we are at now is there's nothing in writing yet, which is why we haven't made the announcement public, and we will not do so until we do and share it with community. But I do want to share with you all that there has been a proposal where the governor's team has offered to $40 million to start this fund. And this would be a fund that would then be distributed to organizations, so that organizations provide that money directly to community. So that funding is not going to go for the organization's general funding or to upkeep the organization's work. This funding will be for community members, so that people get that money immediately for the purpose of time, because it'll be much faster. They will be more geographic equity, because the organizations from all across will get them. So that's where we are right now in this proposal. And we are waiting to get something in writing, and our team is meeting to then think about what implementation looks like. And of course, we continue to ask the governor to create a long-term solution, which would involve the legislature and, to create an unemployment program for the state of Washington moving forward. So that's where we're at. What you can do right now is continue to put pressure, continue to call, continue to email, continue to call your representatives and ask them to advocate for this in the special session that will happen in August. So this is going to be a priority for our movement in the upcoming legislation. So starting to do some of that legwork is really important. And again, once this implementation and once we know what this process is gonna look like, we're gonna need support, your support in getting that word out and helping people apply so that they get the money that they need to be able to survive. And the last update that I want to provide, and the last thing that I want to talk about, is DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. As I mentioned, on June 18th, which is when I was supposed to have this meeting with you all, the Supreme Court issued their decision, which was the least likely solution that we were expecting. We were all ready for the worst. We were all ready to take on the streets and fight. And we were pleasantly surprised to hear of this ruling, which said that the way that Trump ended the program was not proper, and therefore the program stays as it was on September 4th, 2017, the day before Trump rescinded that program, which means that DACA renewals are continuing to be accepted. And if folks have DACA and their DACA permit is expiring this year, they need to renew as soon as possible. This also means that new applications should be accepted. We are waiting on guidance from the USCIS. This is the agency that processes the paperwork on what the process will look like. So people who have never applied for DACA or have never received DACA should be getting all their paperwork ready to be able to submit. Another question that we've been getting a lot is, what about advanced parole? And advanced parole was granted to individuals who needed to leave the country for a short period of time due to an emergency. It could be a family member dying, or in a serious condition. It could be for studying abroad, right? So DACA recipients would go through this process. They would be granted, if granted, you could leave the country for a certain amount of time, and then you would be able to come back into the country lawfully. So right now, advanced parole, again, we're waiting on the guidance on whether that is going to be available. But even if it is available, folks have to be cautious. We are in a global pandemic, so just because you're being granted the permission to leave does not guarantee or does not mean that you will be allowed back in the country. And with the political climate, with the global pandemic, with what's happening at the border, folks have to really make that decision on whether they want to take that risk of leaving and not knowing whether or not they're going to be left back in. So NERB is offering free virtual consultations and DACA renewals. You can go to NERB /DACA on their website to get the latest information and to get information on how to set up those appointments. So please let people know, again, if they have DACA, to renew. If they have never had DACA, they need to start getting their paperwork ready and set up a consultation with NERB or any other attorney, immigration attorney, so that they can review their application and go over their options. I'm going to pause here. There's about 9 minutes left, and open it up for questions or comments. I don't know how y'all want to do this. If it should be through the chat box or if you can unmute yourself.
Thanks, Brenda. Yes, people can ask in the chat box or unmute yourself. Tanya, you asked for a link. Which link was that?
I believe it was, oh gosh. I don't know. It was a link about resources, where we could find the resources.
So Brenda, this was early on in your presentation. So if you want to, if you remember what that might have been, let us know.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm putting the link in the chat box. This is the YSEN resource finder. And again, if you notice any mistakes on any of the resources, or that local fund or that resource is no longer available, there's also an option for you to make a suggestion, to make an edit or correction. So we have volunteers that are looking at this on a daily basis. So feel free to suggest any resources, but also make edits or corrections to an existing one.
So, you know, I also wanted to mention to folks and that Brenda and her organization are recruiting for interns or fellows this summer. So if you know of people, you can send them her way as well. I will put that in the chat. We've shared it with our parents. It's paid. And it looks like a really great opportunity, especially for younger folks. And so I just wanted to mention that as well.
Yes, thank you so much for uplifting those paid fellowships. We have 4 areas. It could be youth, it could also be parents, right? People without any immigration status. We highly encourage folks that are directly impacted to apply to these positions. One of the fellowships is for the hotline. The other one is for language justice. Even though we are a statewide network, we know that we are very Latinx, Spanish centric, and that's not okay, and we need to do better. So we definitely, that's a priority for us, to be able to make all of our information, resources, and our space accessible to other communities. The resource finder right now, it's only in English, but our tech team is working on a solution to be able to translate and have all that information available in multiple languages, so that it's not just for organizations, but also communities can access that. The other fellowship is for immigrant youth organizing. So there's going to be a lot of organizing right now post DACA. Even though DACA gets to stay right now, Trump could come back and try to end it the proper way. So then that's going to be another battle. And we need to be able to find solutions and creative solutions on how to continue to work and live without DACA, since our communities have been doing it, for a long time. And we have a Keep Washington Working Fellow as well that will help us with the implementation of this statewide law, again, that prohibits collaboration between police and ICE. So please share that with your networks and let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to put my contact info in the chat box.
So Brenda, Leticia is looking for the application for economic help. I think Leticia, you're in the Yakima Valley, right? Can't hear you. So Brenda has put her email in there. So are you saying that for the application for economic help, they should just contact you directly?
Katie, this is Fatima. I don't know if she's talking about the help for the families. They can go online and look for the scholarship junkies and apply directly there. Yeah, we have done it several times.
Fatima, can you stick that link into the chat as well?
gonna look really quick in the internet to make sure that I do it correctly.
I'm gonna put it now.
Oh, thank you.
The statewide. I know some people get really discouraged when they're like 20,000 people have applied, and I mean that is a big number, but people should continue to apply because those applications are also informing the fundraising aspect of it, right? So for example, there was a huge number of single mothers with children that were applying, so then they were able to secure funding for that group. Because the applications keep coming in, then there is an argument as to why we need more money and more partnerships. So that just means that people, they're not going to get the assistance right away. It may take a while, but they should be applying if they need it, because the likelihood of getting it, it's really high right now, since there is a lot of fundraising efforts happening. So I know it's a little bit discouraging, but just encourage people to do it.
Yeah, we have the same approach. You know, when we this is similar to when we asked all of the programs to apply if they had any intention of doing facilities, so that we could convince the legislature that there was a demand for facilities, right? Because until they see it on the ground, like in terms of the application numbers, sometimes legislators just don't believe that the need is out there. And so doing an application, you might get the money, and you also it's kind of like an advocacy effort, an individual advocacy effort to really illustrate that there's a need.
Okay. Katie, I just want to say something, and I'm pretty sure this group of people, and they're pretty much very young, under 30, the people that are leading all this. Brenda's one of them, and Monse. I'm very proud of those, even if they're not my kids. I see them, you know, and I see them growing. So since I started following this group, and the first time I saw the Wysen name was a conference, actually, 2017, and with an immigration, a lawyer came and talked to us about some things, and then that was the first time I heard that. And then since this pandemic, that name has all over the place, even on TV now. So they're doing a great job. And I saw how the fundraising they've been doing from this little bit of money. They were dreaming about getting $50,000, where they are today, to $5 million. So they are working really hard. And I just want to say their job is incredible. And if people can participate in their meetings, they have it every 2 weeks. It's very informative. That's what I get all my information. And it's just makes my heart squeeze. They do great. They do a great job. Like I said, I'm very proud of those young people. I know that when I leave this world, it's going to be in a good hands.
Awesome. So Brenda, is the fellowship available only to Spanish speakers, or is that more broad?
No, it's more broad, to anyone. It's open to anyone.
Okay.
So Katie, I mean, what Fatima said was wonderful, and I second it. And then I want to really congratulate all of the team and the committee that is working with the governor, because it's really important that money doesn't go to a state agency, because people are really, really afraid about applying, even though it is open to the people, undocumented people. So I'm really happy to hear that money is going to go through other organizations that the community trusts, because they're able to give so much to the community because the community trusts those organizations. And I'm pretty sure if that money was put in a state agency, people won't apply. So thank you so much for the work that you guys are doing. We feel, like Fatima said, we feel very proud of you guys. And thank you so much on behalf of the community. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And Senator Wilson agrees, which is good. All right, any final questions? All right, Brenda, so we are working with Brenda to do this same presentation in Spanish to our Spanish-speaking members. And so we will let all of you guys on the call know that date and link so that you can share it with the families that you work with and other staff who would like to do this in Spanish and learn all this great information and opportunities. So so stay tuned, and we will also post this on the WASA YouTube for people to be able to watch if they missed, or if other of your colleagues would like to see it. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Brenda, and thank you, Fatima and Marisela, and have a great week.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Gracias,
you.
Brenda.
Thank you.
Adios.
Thanks.